at a very higher rate. So there you go.
Wow. Wow.
Glad you're
Did
on
anybody notice that Jason looks a lot like Owen Wilson? This guy?
Yeah.
Look at him.
At a very higher rate.
Leave it to Eric.
So I have a story about that. I was on a flight. You know how Owen Wilson always plays the dumb guy in his
You
movies?
notice that Jason looks a lot like Owen Wilson? This guy?
Yeah.
Now you think about it, you almost sound like him too.
Well, that was it. It was a lady behind me in the airplane, and after we got up, she came up in the aisle and she goes, "Oh, I was listening to you on the plane, and you sounded just like Owen Wilson." I'm like, "Doesn't he like a dummy? You know, how do I sound?" But so I've had that, believe it or not.
There we go.
It's better than, oh, I really like your work, you know?
Yeah. This is
I'm a
this
big
is,
fan.
by the way, the no haircut challenge in the family till I fully vaccinated. So that's what's going on there, just so everybody knows.
Do you have shot number 1?
Well, got shot number 1 on Thursday, last Thursday. Number 2 is May 6th. Yeah,
And which one did you do, Moderna or Pfizer?
it's Pfizer.
Yeah, I Pfized, and second one, I got a little tired the day after the injection, but thankfully it was pretty tranquil.
So what I've heard or read, whether this is true or not, is that if you have a strong reaction to the first shot, that means you were exposed and you have some of the antibodies in your system. And if you have a strong reaction to the second shot, that means you were never exposed.
That's interesting. My wife and I both did the J&J, and I still had antibodies when I did it, and I got hit for 24 hours. Just felt like I had COVID again. You know what I mean? Without the coughing, no coughing, but every other symptom was almost exactly the same.
Interesting.
But it was gone in 24 hours.
Wow.
My wife had no symptoms.
Did she have it when you were at it? She didn't get it. So that,
No, nobody in my family got it, which was crazy.
yeah.
So
Just you. Wow.
just me. I was the lucky one.
By the way, as people are signing on, just so you guys know, they can hear this whole conversation. So
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
Josh, you're going to run through all the sponsors, right?
I'm just going to point to them real briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through all the names. Just a little housekeeping stuff that I'm going to go over real quick, because this is open to everybody. I'm assuming everyone that's going to be on knows who HTA is, but if not, I'm just going to say a sentence or two about that. Let them know that, our next webinar, and I'm going to launch a poll. I've got a couple of polls to launch. And they're quick ones. And then hand it over to you. And then I emailed everybody today. So when you ask the first question and it's someone's first time to speak, just have them, like I was telling you guys this morning, just introduce yourself. You guys everyone knows who you guys are pretty much, but you could say who you are, where you're from, your company. And yeah, that's it. And I will assume I'm going to I'll just kind of go dark when this thing starts. And if you want to direct anything towards me, I'm here listening, of course, and I'll jump in, right? If like, hey, what about this, Josh? Or what are dealers doing here? I'll jump in. But if not, I'm assuming I'm just kind of lurking and learning from the Jedi Masters here. I always learn stuff from these webinars. So.
please introduce Jason as Owen Wilson. Just
Owen.
see if anyone knows. Anyone pays attention.
It's the long hair, Jason. You did it to yourself.
Yeah.
No. I made a reference the other day to Bobby Sherman, and I really dated myself.
You definitely are dating
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. And so you have to do, Jason, because your haircut's pending here, right? A couple weeks.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do the before after the same day shot and get that out on LinkedIn.
He's going to YouTube live stream his haircut. Are you gonna buzz it? Or are you gonna?
No, it's the number 4. That's all. Like when I go in, give me the number 4. That's the measurement on the tool.
You got to go locks for love, right?
Yeah.
Donate it.
So many of us have become, or our wives have become pros using those wall
Flowbee.
clippers and stuff like that. Flowbee, the suck cut. I've had one of those wall clippers for like, I don't know, 25 years, and it never turned it on until a year ago. And now my wife's good at cutting hair. So there we go. But I was the guinea pig for a while.
Never start moonlighting.
Yeah.
One thing, Josh, don't be afraid to give me the hook or give us the hook, and are we going to be able to listen? Is anybody going to be able to ask questions via this?
I'm gonna tell, you can see the Q&A, I believe, right? Because we're all panelists, so you should be able to have access to the Q&A. And I'm gonna tell people to ask questions through the Q&A. When Eric moderates, he kind of scans that and brings in appropriate ones if need be. But at the end, there's not a hard cut on this.
You good, Dan?
Assuming about an hour.
The electrical over a little bit.
And
Okay.
maybe a little time for Q&A, or just incorporate the Q&A in there, in
Got
the
it.
flow.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. I had it hidden on the bottom of my screen there, so I'll just keep my eyes peeled on it.
Okay.
But if you see a good one, feel free to interject if I miss it.
Okay, sounds good. So we're 10:50, or got what, about 1 minute, and then I'll kind of kick it off here officially. So
how crazy busy are you integrators?
Be busy,
Things are picking up.
especially with all the people going out and taking shots. I mean, they should, but it's just, disruption of time.
Is New York coming back, Ed?
And New York's definitely coming back.
That's good.
It's exciting. It's exciting to see the restaurants coming back to life and people out. And everybody's very respectful here in the city still. They wear masks whether they're vaccinated or not. And it's been gratifying to see a lot of the restaurants that we thought were down forever actually now popping back up, that they're up to 50% capacity. Plus, the smart ones doubled their capacity by the outdoor stuff. So they're bigger than they ever were before.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You could, I think Mark and Eric could attest to California popping back really well, because the traffic is back to sucking hard.
Big time.
That's how we tell. Oh man, take out third, fourth, and fifth gears of your car. You don't need them. So, all right, it's 11 o'clock. Should we get rolling?
Let's just get
Sure.
it going.
What's that?
Let's get it going.
All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone that's tuning in. And before we get into our topic of sales closing tips, just a couple things, announcements and introductions to get out of the way. My name is Josh Christian. I'm the CEO of the Home Technology Association, also known as the HTA. And for those of you that are new to HTA, we're the public-facing association that certifies the top integration firms that are out there. We're like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval for the integration community, giving the best integrators a third-party validation of their qualifications to differentiate them from unqualified competitors. Today's webinar is the second in a series of 8 that the HTA is doing in 2021. Each of them is designed to help you, integrators, to become more successful and profitable. Our next webinar, just if you're interested in this topic, on May 19th is all about D-Cinema, which is the highest of the highest end of home theaters. And there's a lot of interest in that from a poll we did back in December. So look out for that, all about D-Cinema. Now we have a favor to ask. This will just take just a few seconds of your time. You should see on your screen now a poll. We just have 2 polling questions here about your referral sources. Question is, are any of the following industry partners currently key referral sources for you? Select all. It's multiple choice, architects, designers, and builders. And love to get your input there. And then the next question is also related to this, like what's your plans to reach out to architects, designers, and builders, and these other industry partners in the future, if you are planning to do that. So anyways, we'd like to also give a huge thanks to Jason Knott, who's our moderator today. Everyone probably knows Jason Knott, also known as Owen Wilson's doppelganger of CE Pro. He's the longtime editor-in-chief of CE Pro. So this just kind of give you a little background of this article. This Eric Thies, one of our moderators here, wrote an excellent article online, which is it's being published in this May issue. It's called "Lose the Leads Mentality and Focus on Closing." So it's a great article. If you haven't read it, it's on page 52 of your May issue, and that is kind of what spurred this on. Okay, here's the next poll coming up. This is what spurred on today's topic. Let's get some other experts out here that are really good at closing sales, because what we hear sometimes, it's just really kind of weird. A lot of you are busier than you've ever been, yet when you talk to them, oh, we need more leads. Oh, really? What's your closing percentage? Are you really closing the right clients that are coming to you? It's not an absolute numbers game. You want to close those projects that are the right job, the right client for you. And that's what this is about. So you're sure to benefit from today's information. Every one of these webinars has been excellent. So there will be some Q&A time as well. So if you have any questions, use the Q&A for that, and we'll get to that. We want to give a big shout out to our supporting brands. You'll see the tiles on here, platinum and gold and silver supporting brands. These are brands that support the Home Technology Association and our mission of providing excellence to homeowners and industry partners. So a big shout out to these companies. They're definitely worthy of your business. This is being recorded, and it's also being live streamed on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like a recording of this, then be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will get a notification when this pops up. It'll take us a few days to do some quick edits and things like that. You will get the link to our YouTube channel and the follow-up email that Zoom automatically sends out to you all post webinar. So you will get those recordings, and this will be up on our channel. And now I'll stop talking and invite the real talent. So Jason Knott, over to you.
Thank you, Josh, and I'm glad you introduced me as Owen Wilson and not David Cassidy. So I've stepped up a little bit. But I just want to reiterate before we jump into the panel a little bit of what Josh said, and why I'm, first of all, thankful for HTA for asking me to participate in this and to be with such a distinguished group of guys. But why at a conversation like this is so important is exactly what HTA is all about in terms of elevating the industry. And think about for a second what this panel is doing. These four industry gurus here are opening themselves up and sharing their secrets of success for the entire industry, which is what the goal is, to elevate everybody. So, for every customer that has a poor experience with the custom integration field, it not only hurts their businesses, it hurts your businesses, it hurts the whole industry. So, an event like this and a conversation like this is really important, and I'm glad everybody's here to take advantage of it. To Josh's point, just in case anybody didn't know where to ask the questions, the Q&A button at the bottom is where you want to ask those questions. And if I could remind everybody, ask them as you think of them. Don't wait till the end, even though we're going to have the conversation at the end but as you think of them, go ahead and plug them in. I'm going to be scanning them throughout the presentation. So, all right, first things first, let me introduce the panel and have each of them tell us a little bit about their company and why they're such an esteemed member of this industry. Let me start with Ed Gilmore, Gilmore Sound Advice in New York City. Hi, Ed, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Gilmore's.
Thanks, Jason. Gilmore Sound Advice is more or less a boutique integration company. We're based in Midtown Manhattan. We have a showroom off of 11th and 45th Street. And we've been in business, believe it or not, this is going to be our 30th year this year. So we've been around a really long time. We've been around really since the infancy of this entire industry. And, I think our specialty is that we learned a long time ago that we're really a service industry, and service was the most important part of, hanging on to our clients, and also, inspiring them to come back to us. So a big part of our business is that repeat business that we get from our longstanding clients, which, as we all know, is the easiest route to go.
Fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. Next up, Mark Ontiveros, Audio Images in Southern California, and that is a real palm tree behind him and a real Southern California sky. Mark, tell us about Audio Images.
Thanks for having me. 45 people on the team, almost 30 years, creeping up on it in business. We specialize in home theater and media room, as well as full system integration and high tech. And I will echo what Ed said, service is number one.
All right, thanks for joining us and making us feel really bad about being inside today, Mark. Next up, Barry Schurr of Osbee Industries out of metropolitan New York area. Hi, Barry. Tell us a little bit about Osbee.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. Osbee, and great to join you gentlemen as well. I mean, great group of folks. But this is our 25th year in business at Osbee, and we are home bases in Westchester County, just outside of New York City, where we've got our production facility where we build everything in advance of installation. We've got a nice showroom here as well. Also a showroom in Lower Manhattan, which is a living space that actually allows our clients to come in and touch and feel and experience the Osbee way, if you will. We specialize in residential home automation, really from soup to nuts, everything from telephony and networking right on through home theaters and everything in between. And look forward to sharing anything that I can provide to the industry with everybody on the call today, and look forward to helping out.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing about how exactly you use that showroom to help close sales for the conversation today. All right, last but not least, Eric Thies of DSI Luxury Technology, also out of Southern California. Hi, Eric. Tell us a little bit about DSI.
Well, DSI is a company that's just trying to achieve as many home theater awards as Mark Ontiveros. That's basically our goal. Yeah, so we're a luxury boutique, just like these other guys, about 27 employees. Our typical project is about $500,000. That's the kind of world we play in. So, super high end projects and high touch, high service. And just very similar to these other pros we've got on this panel here.
All right, thank you. I'm going to stick with you, Eric, since Josh kind of teed it up here with your article that you put together for CE Pro, which was fantastic. If anybody didn't see it, it's already online, and as Josh said, it's going to be in our May issue. And it was specifically talking about how integrators seem to be so focused on lead and finding as many leads as they can, but not necessarily on their closing ratio and their closing techniques. What kind of spurred you to write that, and what is it you see as the problem as it exists out there for many integrators?
Well, what spurred me to write it is, Josh and I talk a lot, and Josh is out there trying to build the best mousetrap possible with HTA in terms of, creating a system that dealers can use to be better and close more business and, get jobs away from unqualified companies. And, he was sharing with me, like, what do the HTA certified guys want? And he's like saying they're all asking for leads. And I'm like, that's just dumb, right? Right now, we all probably have more leads than we need, but we're wasting an enormous amount of time doing a bunch of proposals that go nowhere, not closing, not qualifying properly. So, we've got birds in hand. Most of us do at this point because everyone's improving their house or building a house or whatever. We need to just get better at taking those birds in hand and turning them into projects, as opposed to going through that whole process of meeting a new person, figuring out if they're the right client for us, presenting them, doing all the engineering for proposal, presenting it, doing revision after revision, only to lose it to somebody else. So, so that was really it. So I think dealers just kind of need to focus on, they already have a pretty good, amount of leads coming into their business, and I think what Josh is trying to do primarily with HTA is help them close those leads, and particularly away from less qualified companies. So to me, we should all be focused on improving our closing percentage, because that's the metric that matters, right? Leads isn't a project. Lead is, just an opportunity that has a lot of work behind it to create a close in our business. So that's where it kind of started.
So let's dig into that a little, because obviously every company needs to have leads, but it sounds like what's happening from what you hear is a lot of integrators, they're not qualifying properly. Is it really the qualification process? Tell us about how you, on your website, from a realtor, from whomever you get a lead, how do you go through, what's that first step of qualifying the customer to realize, do I even want to spend time on this proposal?
It's not an easy process because, one, you got to match up this client. One, can this client afford a company like ours or Barry's or Ed's or Mark's, right? Are they in that realm? What type of house are they building? What is their perceived budget of the project they're going to do? Have they done a system like this before? You got to ask all these questions, right? Typically an integrator with a lead is like, a dog with a table scrap. They're going to, whatever gets thrown at them, they're going to jump on and get all over it. And it's just, without taking those steps and qualifying the customer. So there's a lot of questions you got to ask, and you've got to sort of get into the client's head a little bit to determine if it's even, worth your time. And Josh had told me that Matt Milstein at M2 uses, which I thought was brilliant, uses the HTA budget calculator as a way of like handling those incoming phone calls. So basically what happens is, a client will call up, say, hey, I want a completely automated home and a home theater, blah, blah, blah. And so then what he does is he says, okay, fine. Before our first meeting, I'm going to email you this budget calculator, come back and tell me what the results were and where you want to be. And if he doesn't get a call back, that means that that's a waste of time for him because that client can't afford Matt. And so I've been using that a lot. And that's sort of a quick way of taking an incoming lead and seeing if that's the kind of the right fit. So that's kind of just a hack or a trick. But, typically what I do is if a client calls me, I get the address, I'll look up the address, I'll see the value of the home. The typical home we work on is 8 million and up. And that's not to be a snob, that's just our focus. So if that house is a lower value, that's a questionable thing. There's geographic area. There's a lot of things that we're looking at to determine if this is a fit for our client. Those
are great tips. Great tips. Yeah. Let me kind of go through with the panel. Let's hear about some of the ways you try and qualify that customer before you spend any time. Ed, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think I've done probably a miserable job at this through the years. We've taken a lot of clients that perhaps we shouldn't have, and we're being much more we're discriminating a lot more right now than we ever have before. I'll throw out also that when we get a call that comes in and there's really no reference to that call, most of the time we're getting leads, solid leads. They're coming either from designers or architects or clients really who have referred friends to us. If they haven't come from any of those directions and there's more of a cold call, or I get the sense of that this is a guy who's just kind of like sniffing around for different integrators to do a job, then I will throw the HTA calculator out there. And if it's not on your website, it should be on everybody's website, right? It's a perfect way to actually just, when that guy calls and says, oh, give me a ballpark. What do you think this is going to cost? Well, what does that mean? A ballpark. What are you doing? What's your intention? It's a very, tricky subject to have on a phone call that's coming in cold to you. So basically, we'll refer the HTA calculator to them, and that has really thrown some cold water on people in a smart way, not in a negative way. So we'll do that. But I think that the most important thing that you can do with any client when they call is try to find that alignment. Do they align with your passion? Is this a client that's going to say to you, they're coming to me, we want to have a meaningful relationship with the client. And what that means is that if somebody's coming to me and they really don't care at all about music and they don't really care about the video experience, why are we working for them? There has to be, they have to share the passion that we have for what we do. And that's pretty evident pretty quickly when you get on the call. So that's something that, red flags go off in my head when I'm not feeling that kind of warm and fuzzy coming from the client at all.
It's interesting because, you could make the case that there's a lot of wealthy people who really don't understand music and don't understand video, but that's part of your role is really introducing them to the joys and of that entertainment element. So it's a kind of a plus when you got somebody who already appreciates it, I guess.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. There's a small group of integrators that I talk to, and one of them, Paul Bachner, who always says this. If he gets the sense that somebody doesn't respect what we do, really respect us for what we can offer them, then go someplace else. And I think that that's something that I've really been sensitive to more recently as well. And you can get that sense. There's no sense fighting it. You know what I mean? If you don't feel that it's the right fit with the client, you should just get out, just back out of it. Or else, and I want to throw this out to the panel, what is your record for revisions on proposals? I'm really curious to know how many revs you guys have gone through where a client has tried to value engineer your project down.
And you bring up a great point, right? And it really comes down to who your client really is. If you're dealing with and working with the end user homeowner or the resident, very different than working with a designer or an architect client. Because you're one step potentially removed from what that client's true expectations are. And they're being fed through the design community and segued into making some technology decisions that, you know, we love hiding technology. I think we are experts at it, and that's what our clients really love and appreciate about what Osbee brings to the table. But at the same time, if a client is a true audiophile, and their designer or their architect hasn't understood that passion for them, we're going to miss out on that. And so it's very important. You know, you said a great word, which is alignment. And I'm a big fan and staunch advocate for aligning with that client. And that's where you're really going to make a connection. And that's where you're going to have a client for life. And that's where you're going to get your referral base from. And that's where you're going to continue to do business with those folks in a very successful way. And they will refer you like-minded individuals and or potential clients to continue to feed that the base of your business.
Mark, you want to chime in? Is there any kind of telltale that you use when you're trying to qualify somebody?
Trust your instincts, do your research, reach out to some of your best clients. You know, in this market of Orange County, and probably the same in most of everybody's markets, wealthy people know wealthy people. And if you talk to your CPA, talk to your clients, talk to your interior designers, look for some common threads, do a little research on who the client is and what they're all about, and basically demand that you get at least 30 minutes with the client. I know in the LA market, it can be nearly impossible with some of those uber wealthy rock stars that Eric gets to deal with, but it's pretty critical to be able to get in front of and spend a few minutes with, connecting and understanding who your end user client that's going to be using the system every day.
Let me circle back on Ed's question there about revisions. Eric, you want to tackle that? Is that you've done you've picked the right client when you have a few number of revisions, or does it really all over the place? Maybe that those revisions are upgrades and it's not so bad.
Revisions are the worst thing ever. I mean, it's just such a time suck. And you know, Ed struggles and I probably struggle with like really kind of preventing those revisions by asking all, you know, or having real conversations about the budgets, you know, because, you know, so Ed hit the nail on the head. It's all about value engineering. Like we start at a certain price, client throws up, hates it. Oh, what can we do? We give them all sorts of ideas. The worst part about the revisions is that no matter, you know, you'll take a $500,000 system, you'll get it down to 250, but the client only remembers all the stuff you had in a $500,000 system. And then at the end of the job, you're like, where is all that stuff? You're like, oh no, you value engineered that stuff out. That's just an aside. But no, I don't have any wise advice on how to avoid revisions except to just have real conversations about budget as early as possible, because
there's an inverse correlation, I believe, between number of revisions during the proposal stage and likelihood of you closing the job.
You know what I find, Mark and Eric as well, is, you know, the better we're able to listen to the client and understand truly what they want, the less revisions we find. If the client is a little wishy-washy about where they really want to focus and what their primary objectives are, they'll ask for, well, just send that to me and let me know what that looks like. That's a danger, right? Because you're sometimes leaving money on the table, and sometimes you're shooting over the moon for them. But if you're truly able to listen to the client and really understand what their needs are, I have found that the quantity of revisions is somewhat reduced, and that's a great way to do it. It's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. But to Mark's point, if you start multiple revisions, that's a time suck, and that's a downward spiral, for likely not executing that transaction.
I'll go back to your point, Barry, and or Mark, whoever brought it up about, talking to the end user versus talking about, talking to their estate manager or whatever. You're going to have a lot more revisions if you can't get to the client, because you're relying on their interpretation. You're the estate manager or business manager's interpretation of your proposal to the client and what's really important to the client. So they'll start making all sorts of assumptions, and then you're in revision hell, because they're never right and they never bother to ask the client. So if you can get to the client, get to the client.
My record was 9. And then what I realized at revision 8 was that the client had never seen any of the proposals.
Yep.
It infuriated me. So I insisted on meeting the client. Revision 9 was a complete reversal of the 7 value engineered proposals we'd already sent out.
Yeah.
And we were so close to throwing in the towel on it. We're so glad we met with the client, because then completely reversed the whole course, which was salvation. So yes, I agree. Do not go through client reps. Do not go through. You have to meet the client. I think it's essential.
All right, let me dig in here and see if I think this will help a lot of the people who are listening today and watching today and I know it's different based upon, as Ed was describing, a lead that's coming from a good referral source like an architect or designer that you're working with, versus one that just kind of cold call comes in. But I'll start with you, Mark. Let's just look at your cold calls. Somebody who's come to your website, hasn't come as a referral from a customer or about a close connection. What percentage of those would you find that you should end up taking, or do you end up taking? I don't want to ask you guys how many jobs you do, because you're all different sizes, so that's not going to mean anything to the audience. But percentage of, like, hey, look, this percent of those cold call projects we think we should be able to close.
It's a good question, but the bulk of the business does come from those other sources. So these cold calls are nearly non-existent unless it's a retail sale of some piece of equipment that they're looking for that we're authorized for. We don't have any brands other than ours on our website. So it's usually because the manufacturer is linked to us. And then the questions start, because I won't just sell them a piece of gear. That's just not our business model. So honestly, I don't really have a good data point for you, because it's almost never that we would just get somebody calling us without any kind of referral.
It was going to be a 2-part question, and I didn't ask the second part, which was, what's the close? How does that compare to how you close when you've got that architect, designer, builder you work closely with, and then it's a referred customer?
We close about 80% of what we propose. There are going to always be proposals that are done because of relationship, and we have no intention of having jobs be ours. We're just trying to make sure that we keep the relationship. So of the jobs we really want, we probably close 90, but of the jobs that we propose, it's probably closer to 80%.
Yeah, that's a tough one, Mark, isn't it? When you get a referral to a job that really isn't in your wheelhouse or isn't in your sweet spot, and you don't want to upset the referral source and say, hey, we're not interested. So, we put something together, and we don't do it maliciously to not take the job, but we have sometimes even done a proposal and or referred that to another integrator whom we trust with a dear client like that. So, we think that they do a better job, and that's really nice as well, because back to the referrer, they're really thankful that their client was taken care of, and everybody at the end of the day is super happy.
So Barry, will you let that referral source know, hey, this really is not in our wheelhouse, but we've got somebody who we trust, who we think this job is better for?
100%. And when we explain it to the referral source, not only is that helpful for them to understand how to utilize our services much more effectively as well, I think there's a huge amount of respect for that, to simply say, you know, we are not the end all be all for anybody who wants a, you know, a Sonos, you know, wireless audio solution in their backyard. That's just, you know, certainly we can do that. Certainly we can all do that, but that's not where our expertise lies. And therefore that's not going to be a client that we give, you know, the very best that we can give to, because with a smaller job like that, with less integration and less, you know, less project associated with it, we're really just not good at it. And, you know, it's like hanging a single TV on a wall. There are people who are significantly better equipped, and we would much rather get a client to somebody who's going to take best care of them, even if it means that we are not going to be doing business with them directly. And you know what? They sometimes come back and say, hey, I really appreciate that. You know, my partner, you know, is building, you know, $30 million home out in the Hamptons. We'd really like you to take care of that. And we understand that that's in your sweet spot. And that has happened before, and it's been fantastic. So sometimes turning away business in a very respectful way is a terrific way to actually get more business.
So is that 80-90% number that Mark mentioned similar at Osbee?
Yeah, we're probably, you know, slightly below that. I would say we're high 70% close rate on those jobs that we want and come to us. And that's, I would say, probably pretty typical at this level that we play at in this area.
Eric, same question. If there's something you want to add, or if it's like, hey, same as the other guys, let me know.
Kind of same as the other guys.
Ed?
Yeah, you know, I'm really arrogant, so I always felt that if somebody came to me, that it was my job to lose. That was my level of confidence. I'd make the decision whether I want to lose it one way or another. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I would say that our closing rates are, you know, I really have never paid a whole lot of attention to the metrics of terms of closing rates because of my sheer arrogance. But I think that ultimately we're looking at somewhere, I would say 70. If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would say 90%, but I think that's all BS. And, you know, we forget about the jobs that we just let, you know, go. But I think that, you know, the jobs that we really want to close, we are very successful at, and we go after it hard.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask, because there could be, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching today who, you know, haven't been around for decades like you guys have all been. How has that changed? What did you learn? Did you learn, hey, we don't want to go after, has your closing ratio actually increased or decreased because you got a little more selective, or has it just always been around the same? Ed?
Decreased for me, for sure.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't have the patience that I had before for that process.
Interesting. Same with everybody else, Barry?
You know, over the last, you know, 7+ years, we've really focused more and more on the higher end and full integration packages, and really work with higher end designers, architects, builders, etc. And the more you work from a strictly referral base, the higher the close percentage is going to be. Of course, the bigger you become as a company, and then you get to the law of big numbers, and you get more and more referrals. You need to be selective in how you do that. You know, very recently, through the last, you know, 9-10 months with the COVID situation, we got a lot of calls from clients wanting to make smaller upgrades, whether they had now moved into their secondary or tertiary homes more permanently during the COVID situation, or they referred their friends to us who are now working from home and doing homeschooling, etc. And we were flooded with small network upgrade opportunities, and we tried to be very selective in who we were able to fulfill, because we didn't want to crush our capacity while at the same time being able to recognize new client opportunities and fulfill existing client needs. So it was a very, very tricky balancing act. So, you know, it's about the business cycle. It's about the referral source. It's about, you know, taking those jobs that make sense for you as a business based upon your business metrics. There are, There are people outside of the New York metropolitan area that have a significantly lower cost of doing business than I may have, and they're able to perform jobs that aren't as robust and do a great job at it. That's just not our business model currently. And I don't mean to sound arrogant in any way, shape, or form, but every bit, it's like a restaurant, right? There's McDonald's for people who want something quick and fast and it fills the belly. And, there are, starred Michelin chefs out there serving a handful of folks per evening. That's just a business decision that we have made, and it has proven to be very successful for us, thankfully, here in the New York area. And we're thankful to have the clients that we have and work with the partners that we do in order to fulfill those needs.
Let me turn back to Eric. Eric, you had some great tips that were in the article that you put together that were myths and then also mistakes that integrators are making out there when they interface with the client. You want to talk a little bit about what are some of the mistakes and some of these myths that integrators feel like or are doing when they're interacting with a customer in a sales process?
So, the one thing is, going back to cost is like, there's the integrators that think that the clients understand the cost or know what things are going to cost. And that's the worst mistake you could make because we are the biggest trade, I think, delivering sticker shock of anybody in their home, because people just don't understand what our stuff costs unless they've done it before. So to really kind of lay down and establish that cost, and not to beat a dead horse, but again, budget calculator, let the budget calculator give that sticker shock to that client so you're not the bad guy, but educate them on what things cost. And then also don't throw them a big number, throw them a lot of little numbers, give them everything in bite-sized chunks. We do a lot of systems, right? And the client doesn't realize that all that adds up to a gigantic number, But if you present a security camera budget that's $15,000, that's reasonable, and a home theater that's this amount, that's reasonable, and you sort of put together all these systems. At the end of if you're presenting them in all these small budgets, the client goes, "Okay, I get it. That's where we wound up. I understand." Throw them big numbers, hand them your confusing proposal, and expect them to understand what's going on. You're out of your mind. So you can't do that. And that's the other thing is don't assume they understand your proposal. They don't. They have no clue. They really don't understand it. And so, if you think your proposal is going to, if you think your potential client can differentiate your proposal, from your two competitors that are on the job, give up. They're not going to ever be able to determine that. So those are kind of two huge things that I see a lot of integrators make. And these guys can probably elaborate on that a bit.
Now, Mark, let me turn to you. I know one of Eric's other points in the article was making the mistake of ignoring the female head of household during the conversation. I'm not saying that you do that, but what are some of the other mistakes that you think integrators are making out there?
Well, they're chasing to the bottom, and I don't mean the ones on this call or ones that have been around a long time. I'm talking about newer, fresher people that have broken off maybe from companies. They're just willing to do it just because they see big numbers and they think it's all easy, and they don't understand all the expenses, and they're not looking at the long term, and they don't realize the long-term service implications. A lot of other trades, whether it's concrete, drywall, framing, they get the job, they come in, they finish the job, they walk away, and unless they're a plumber and something happens, which there's insurance for, they're probably never going to have to go back to that job. We have clients for life. And I tell every client at the beginning, no matter what size of job, I use the Apple TV as a great analogy. They don't make a platinum coated Apple TV for the billionaires. We all have the same Apple TV. It's $179. They all suffer the same challenges, especially in the older days, from locking up, whatever the problem is. And a lot of that can't be prevented. And we talk about, power and the ISP. And yeah, there's a lot of things we can do to help with that. But at the end of the day, I'm not their internet service provider, nor am I the power company. And those are two really big challenges. So their electronics, they will break. They do break. They do become obsolete. But the good news is we're going to be there 24/7, 365 when they need us to help with those challenges. A lot of it can be done remotely. And I think that some integrators, whether they're high, medium, low end, or however long they've been around, they will, especially with a first time client, not necessarily their client, but somebody new to having a bigger system or integration or anything beyond just a radio in their home, makes a lot of promises or doesn't tell them some of the realities. And so then the client's really disturbed and upset when the system's done because it doesn't do everything, including reading their mind. And so it's another black eye on our industry.
Yeah, I think to your point, you mentioned it earlier about customer service being so key. It's helped, I think, for a lot of integrators, just the mere fact that we now have, everybody's got a smartphone and they can see the number of updates that come through for all those apps to iterate to the customer. This is a living, breathing thing that we're putting in your home, that has to be constantly taken care of. So, Barry,
and a lot of them being home for COVID has shown them, especially ones that were not home a lot, that traveled a lot for business, and their significant other and the estate manager maybe took care of everything. Now they're seeing the value of having people like us because they've been trapped in their homes for a year, and they're seeing what goes on. And especially when the networks were getting hammered, and our networks are all performing or not for some people, but that the ISP wasn't performing, and what it took to wrangle them to the ground and get them out to fix the problems. The internet service provider, not the people who did the hardware, not the integrators. So it's shown value is what I'm getting at. It's actually helped, I think.
Hey, Jason, I want to bring up one other thing that's really important is that, and this was in the article, is that when, if we're a good company, we automatically go into these meetings with the assumption that the client understands that we're a really good company, right? And so, for instance, if, in New York, there's a project out there and Barry goes to interview and Ed goes to interview, Barry got brought in by the designer, Ed got brought in by the architect, but the builder's cousin, he's the third guy, right? So, you can't make the mistake of assuming the client can tell the difference between a Barry and Ed level company and this third guy, because they can't. All of them came in with a referral. All of them understand more about technology than the client does. They're all probably reasonably, charming and persuasive. But all that the client gets is kind of what they see in front of their face, the proposal, the person in front of them. Most of them aren't going to a showroom to see a demo. They're looking at a website maybe, and that's kind of it. And that's how they're basing their decision. And of course, that third Yahoo is going to always be lower. So you really got to start talking about your differentiators. And like everybody on this call has lots of things to talk about their company, of why they're different in their process and how they service. But, that other third guy is also saying a lot of the same things. So you have to really not be, assumptive or lazy to, think that your client can tell that you're the best company. I just wanted to.
Well, I'll throw in, I'll kind of jump on that. I think I have spoken with integrators who are HTA members, and that's where HTA can help and has helped. One particular integrator who I did a story on several months back, if anybody saw it, he actually will get referral letters from HTA that he can take to builders and other people and kind of as that extra level of differentiation for his company from Cousin Charlie. So it's a good point. So Barry, let me go back to you on mistakes. What mistakes do you see that integrators are making, and or maybe ones that you've made that you've rectified?
Sure. It's an interesting question, right? Nobody likes to look in the mirror and say, hey, I made a mistake, or oops. But we take a very pragmatic approach on all of our projects. And after every project, we sit down, we do a post-mortem and say, look at the things that went well and the things that didn't go well. It's a great question. And I think a takeaway from this conversation that we're having today is perhaps we need to do that a little bit on the proposal side as well, and say, hey, we didn't get that proposal. Why do we think we didn't get that proposal? But mistakes wise, it's everything from a rookie mistake of, to Mark's point, or maybe Eric made it, of, not paying enough attention to the spouse during just the overall proposal review, or maybe just not listening properly and completely missing that the client is a total audiophile, and you thought that they were a video file and focused everything kind of on the visual aspect and not so much the auditory aspect of the proposal. We got ourselves in a little bit of trouble. There's an old adage, right? Chain only as strong as its weakest link. And we had a situation, unfortunately, once where, believe it or not, just one of our installers sat down on a piece of furniture in one of our clients' residences. And that was enough for a real, significant black eye that we needed to correct with the client and the homeowner and come away from that. So, we operate at a very high level, and we really always need to mind our P's and Q's when it comes to everything. I would also tell you, don't underestimate any client. Eric said, hey, listen, I do my research, and if they're in under an $8 million home and, unless they're the CEO of XYZ company, those are good indicators. But don't underestimate the guy coming up as well. And we've done that. We've made every mistake in the book. Our goal is to really only make that mistake once, though. That's really the key, and learn from that mistake, communicate that mistake, company-wide, make sure that everybody is aware of it. Mistakes are going to happen. It's natural, or it's human nature. The more you can reduce those mistakes, the more you can tune into what your client's needs really are, the more that you can provide them a solution, right? Not just gear. We're not just selling a widget. We're providing a lifestyle. We're providing an experience. We're providing a real ethereal experience when they get into their home, and a wow factor that should just blow their minds. And the more effective we are at delivering that the very first time, the more successful we will be, and the more successful every integrator will be, whether it's hanging a single TV on a wall, or whether it's doing an entire integrated home with a $500,000 theater and the whole shebang. It's really important to take that away from every client interaction and learn from it.
I put not only underestimating the client, but don't overestimate a client either. I've spoken with integrators who've, because person's a celebrity or a professional athlete, and got burned because they were overestimating. And you brought up a good point. I want to turn to Ed and see what his thoughts are on this about the proposal. What's a guideline for your proposal turnaround? And let me preface it this way, because I've spoken with some integrators who emphasize the need for a 48 to 72 hour turnaround time on a proposal with a client, and then others who said, that's just telling the client that I cookie cuttered something for him and I haven't really put in the time and effort for that. Where do you come out on that?
Yeah, well, I come out on the later side of that. So typically, if somebody wants a proposal, it's 2 weeks, right? Minimally. I mean, can we do it faster? We probably can, and it depends on the scale of the project. But I think that 2 weeks is reasonable to actually put aside the time to do the right documentation, the right engineering, and the right design time, and spending that. Also, it's a little bit about discovery too. I mean, you can't get off a phone call with the client and say, okay, we're going to do a proposal for you. You have to really, this gets back to what Mark was saying, what Eric was saying, is that you have to know, you have to know what they want. You have to listen to them. You have to take the time. And if it's okay to go back to them after initial call and say, hey, we were thinking about your project, and what do you think about this, aspect? Or, we were talking about this portion, and, perhaps we should go with this angle with you. What are you thinking about that? Well, really, how do you utilize, or how do you use, this system if you had one in the past? So I think that's something that, ripping off a proposal is really, it could sound great, but I think it cheapens the experience, and I think you're really shortcutting, and you're cutting off your own legs in a way in terms of where that project can go. I did want to say one thing about, mistakes, that are made, and yes, sitting on a sofa, using the bathroom, for example, a tech going into the master bathroom. I mean, that's like a cardinal sin. You just can't do these things on projects. You'll never get invited back. I also want to say one of the big mistakes I think a lot of integrators make is that they actually bid the project with their own wallet. And I think that's a huge mistake. It's a normal tendency, but I think the fact of the matter is that you have to take that perspective away immediately. It's not with your own wallet. It's with your client's wallet. And it's what they can afford and what their budget will, in a way, will dictate. But that budget is also part of what their expectation is and also what their demands are in terms of the quality of the project. So I think that, you know, very too often we may shy away from selling that big ticket item because, oh, this is probably too much for, who said that's too much for them? You know,
Great point. If anybody else wants to chime in on the turnaround proposal time, do so now or forever hold your peace.
Well, I'll say something. I think that there is you want to strike while the iron's hot, and depending on the size of the system sale, it sometimes is very good to get them a quick proposal, particularly if it's something small and quick. But on a big engineered system, you know, I like to make them wait because, you know, when I finally deliver a proposal in 2 weeks, a lot of them are like, I don't like the price. I don't like, you know, maybe this isn't the system for me, but I don't really want to wait 2 weeks with another company and go through this whole process again. So if you make the process too easy and you give them a proposal too fast, then it's like they think that is the way to go, and it's very easy for them to get a couple more proposals. So it's a balancing act, I think.
It is, and I do want to reiterate, you know, Ed pointed out there, he's in touch with the customer during that time. So it's not like this dead time where they're not hearing from you. So I think that's a good point to make. All right, I want to turn to showrooms. We got about 10 minutes left here, and how you utilize the showroom to help you close the sale. Ed, I've been to your showroom in New York City. It's beautiful. Tell us a little bit about what you have in the showroom and how you use it to help close your sales.
Yeah, so our showroom is, you know, we have a very large open space that we can also hold events for, and we've probably underutilized it for AAA events, but it's something that's on the real front burner for us. Is that as soon as COVID ends, we're going to start really targeting individual firms to come over and bring to our apartment and basically hold some CEU credits if that's what they want, but more importantly, just get to know them and to answer their questions. There's so many questions now about lighting, about fixtures, about things that we can help. And that's the other thing that we have in our showroom. We have a lot of different lighting. We have RGBW lighting, tunable lighting, even so people can understand the concept of, you know, what that differential is between 5% and 1% in a LED lighting. To them, what's the difference? 1%, 5%, it's pretty low. No, it's not. You have to really experience that. We have a small theater, not small in size because it's Manhattan based, right? We wanted to approximate what a room in Manhattan would be like. This is not a man cave with, you know, step seating. This is really a room that can transform itself into a high performance theater. We're highly aligned with Steinway Lingdorf and the Lingdorf products in our showroom, and Meridian as well. And these are the products that we really want people to understand. Fortunately for us, we have a subtenant, which is Planar. So we actually get to show people video in the future, basically, because I don't think that front view, direct view LED is quite ready for prime time just yet, but it's great for them to be able to see it and understand it. So for us, it's a qualifier. You walk in our doors, people understand immediately what we're about. And I think it qualifies or it dispels any type of doubt that people have when they come in. So we've got a great conference room. We can bring up the plans, you know, on a large LED screen, go through it, annotate them, work with the architects. And it's so great not to have to go to an architect's office, but to have them to come to us. It really puts all those distractions that you might have about, oh, what are we going to use for fabric here? What are our doorstops going to look like? What or whatever. That's all gone. They're only here to focus on what they need to focus on, which is what we're going to offer them.
Would you say if you get them to come to the showroom, your close rate is absolutely higher than if they didn't come?
Yeah, I think our close rate in the showroom is more like 95%.
Yeah.
5%.
Fantastic. All right, Mark, same question. How do you use your showroom effectively?
During COVID, not really much. Post-COVID, it's always been a lab and a showroom, and you know, mix that in with clients' homes, and that's kind of the deal. But yeah, the closing rate or people stepping up, especially to see video, you know, definitely seeing video side by side. Here's what you are scheduled to get for this TV, but here's some options. Please have a look at these different options. Let's talk about the nuances. Same thing with projectors. You got to see it. Yeah, see it to understand it, and that's been very helpful.
You mentioned previous clients' homes. So you'll pinpoint, obviously, let's just say if it's an outdoor entertainment system, you're going to pinpoint a previous customer that you did an outdoor entertainment system for. Do you do you incentivize those customers, or you just have such a good relationship with them and say, look, I really would like to bring a customer by? And do you let the customers talk to each other there?
I intentionally leave for the restroom for a good amount of time. And the clients are usually my number one reinforcer salespeople. And a lot of times they have somebody they know in common. They didn't realize it. I try and connect them. It works out great.
Yeah. So that was the one caveat on when you should use the restroom at the customer's house on the project, right?
That's right.
Eric, same question.
So we don't currently use a showroom. At one point in our existence, we did have a showroom, and we used it really just sort of as a general education and more of a credibility builder for our company. But it was really effective in terms of establishing us and differentiating us from our competitors.
So now you do take them routinely, I would assume, to visit previous projects.
It's actually not.
No,
we don't. Fortunately, we're in a position where we get a lot of referral business, and there's not much of a need for a showroom, nor much of a need. Now, I would love to have facilities to do what Mark's doing, to upgrade clients, but to get them to close the project, the showroom's not a necessary thing for us.
that's a good point. Barry, how about at Osbee?
We use the showroom really for two major aspects. Obviously, the gear is the gear, right? And the widgets are the widgets, and the stuff on the wall or in the ceiling is what it is. We use it a lot for our interface, right? So the client interface in terms of how they're going to see their floor plan, how easy and intuitive it is for them to control the products and to control their lifestyle with whether it's an on-wall touch panel, whether it's their iPhone, whether it's a desktop version of it. So that's really helpful. So clients can really kind of understand what it's like to do it in just one single application and to do the myriad of things that they're able to control, in just one place. The second thing that we use it for is the kind of wow, bang, zoom factor of our production facility. So we build all of our racks and pre-test everything, and we've got a number of what we call rack labs in our home base in Harrison, New York. And when you take a client into one of those rooms and there's lots of blinking lights and a couple of racks, they kind of get and understand, oh gosh, I need this whole equipment rack. Got it. Wow, that looks really cool. That, and we've had some clients come back to us and say, I don't want to put that in a closet. I want that in my media room, and I want people to see that. That is badass. And they get to see the precision at which we refer to it in the industry as rack form, but the precision at which we lace and put all of the wiring into the rack. And they can just see and imagine that if that's the precision in the equipment rack, how fantastic it's going to be installed in their residence. So, and then in the city, we've got a living showroom space where you get to just really put that all together. So it's everything from stepping out of the elevator onto into a residence with automated lighting and shades, audio, video, surveillance, everything kind of. We show artwork, and it's very similar to the experience that you would have at Gilmore Sound Advice in the city, which is just you walk in and it's a candy land for technology, and that really has a very impactful aspect to bringing clients in there. And I would agree with that. 95+% for people who come into, and the last year has been tough with COVID and the virus and everything, but when we're able to get end users in there and host events and do the AIA credits and provide value add to our referral base, that's as well a huge opportunity.
Fantastic. Good question that came in here, and somebody was asking what tools you were using to qualify and determine a realistic scope and budget. I think we talked about the HTA budget calculator and how you guys all use that effectively, but there was a two-parter to that question, which was, is anyone collecting a design retainer fee as part of the qualifying process? And if you are doing that, tell us a little bit about what it is you are collecting there. Barry, I'll go back to you on that one.
Sure. So it's not typical that we would collect a design retainer up front. However, we have had projects that have come to us to simply do the design of a project. And so we were kind of the technology architects for a particular job. And in, I would say, probably 75+% of those times that we're hired to provide a scope of work and or to do a proposal that other people would bid out, we are the prevailing firm that is chosen to actually perform the project. Interesting little story, and it happened just recently. We did it, and it was kind of a commercial. It was more of a commercial project, which is not our, not our sweet spot. But we had a commercial project that we did a significant scope of work with a large New York-based builder, and there were a couple of people who were invited to bid. It came down to us and one other integrator. That integrator ultimately backed out. So it was simply us, and then a stalking horse bid came in at a super low rate. And the client came back to us and said, "Hey, this is where you need to be." And we said, "You know what? Thank you anyway. That's not for us at that point." And and it was a 2-comma job, and you need to know when to say when as well. So while it's fantastic, we always include design and engineering as part of our proposals. So whether we get paid for it up front and do a proposal and do the design work up front, or whether we include it in the job, I think it's very important that every integrator get paid for their time. To Ed's earliest comment is, we're a service industry, right? So as a service provider, your commodity is your time. Your time is valuable, and the way you use that time and the way that you're able to walk your clients through the best experience that they're going to have in the residence that they're going to live in and experience every day in and day out, is very important to do so. So don't leave that. Don't shortchange yourself out there, people in this industry. Get paid for the work that you're doing every day.
Right. Eric, let me ask you the same question. Do you get a design retainer fee and then you remit it back to the customer, or is that part of your process?
Every time we can get the client on design, we do, because that sort of takes the budget problem out of the way, and it takes their desire to shop around, and it increases your close rate dramatically. Like 95% close rate you can have if you get them for design. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but once you establish yourself as a consultant, where you're there to help them determine budget, determine scope, and you're building all of that with the client as opposed to handing a proposal, it's a relationship builder. It improves your closing ratio. If you can do it every single time. Unfortunately, you can't. So, but if you can do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. You're also in early, right? The key is really you want to be involved in the project as early as possible.
Yeah.
The earlier you're in, the greater the opportunity that you're going to.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing you think about is if whatever you charge for design, to give the client the choice of having to make a big decision of hundreds of thousands of dollars worth versus a small decision of, a $5,000 or $10,000 design fee to a client is not a giant cost when they think about it in the context of their build. It's a tiny cost. So, it's a fairly easy sale, and it puts you in pole position.
We're bumping up against the time, but I have one other question here that I've heard from some integrators, and I'm curious what your feedback is. That when it's a referral, not from a trade partner like a designer or an architect or a builder, but from another customer, a really good customer. One integrator I've spoken with says that gives him the leeway to actually increase his rates, because he feels that he's got much more confidence that he's not going to lose that project from that referred customer. Is that a standard practice, or is that not something any of you guys do?
I'm not increasing my rates, but I'm not discounting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's very important to my earlier point, right? Get paid for what you do, your service company. I would never raise my rates intentionally, and I wouldn't lower my rates, for no reason, right? I mean, it's that seems like a little, not such a fabulous business practice, I would say.
Well, I was taking notes here in between and just kind of wrapping up, obviously some tips that came out of this for everybody, putting that HTA budget calculator on your website, checking the home and the neighborhood on Google from a pre-qualification standpoint. Seeing where the referral came from is different than a cold call. How asking the customer, finding out if the customer appreciates audio and video. Again, not selling with your own wallet. Looking at the proposal time and making sure that fits from the scope of the project, not too fast, but not too slow either, and staying in touch with the customer. Not using the bathroom, except in Mark's case when he's at the other customer's home and he's going to purposely leave those customers to talk amongst themselves, which is great. And then the ability to use that showroom and showing, I liked Barry's point of not just showing the glorious end result, but showing that back end part of it and all the wiring and all the meticulous nature that you guys do. So those are just some of the tips that you guys were offering today. So Josh, I don't know if you want to chime in for the audience, but I want to just—
Jason, before we bring in Josh, I want to bring in one more that we sort of, a big obvious one that we didn't talk about, and it's true of everybody on this panel and a lot of people in the audience, is that we have a huge advantage in that we have this HTA certification. And if we talk about it, it really, really helps. Because if you just ask your client or a potential client, say, do you have any friends or anybody that you know that has a bad technology experience and hates their technology, you will get 100% yes, because everyone has experienced it or knows somebody who's experienced. And that's our opportunity to tell the client, hey, listen, you think it's because they chose the wrong gear, and that's why you're so obsessed about picking Savant or Crestron or Control 4. That has nothing to do with the gear and everything to do about who installed it. That's the problem. Pick the right guy. You're going to have a great experience regardless of what brand you pick. End of story. And I'm HTA certified. There's a certification standard for this. If you don't hire me, hire someone that's HTA certified, and your chances of success are enormous, right? Your friends hired the wrong guy. Don't make the same mistake. So we all have that in our tool belt. And it's a great differentiator that we just need to talk about more.
Great point.
Green.
Good point. Josh, I'll let you kind of close out the conversation. Thank you to the panel. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Excellent job moderating there, Jason. And thanks for the tips from our esteemed panelists. I love these webinars because I've been in this industry for a long time myself, got the gray hair to prove, but I'm always learning stuff every time from fellow peers like this. So thank you. This is a help to everyone that's listening. Again, this is going to be recorded and shared out on YouTube soon. So I want to thank you for that and sharing the tips. And for all those that are not familiar with the HTA site, this is HTA-certified.org. And again, thanks, Jason, and highly recommend, because a lot of the tips that were talked about today were in the on page 52 of the May issue of CE Pro. Eric goes into some of his steps. Some of them, a lot of it was talked about today. But there's some other points on there too that you're going to find helpful. So it's worth it to you. Eric is a pretty humble guy. He's an amazing closer, and he has a lot of experience with this. I worked with him many years at DSI, so I just watched him just move up and up and up, but he's learning like a sponge from others. So you're benefiting from his knowledge as well. Among, of course, adding all of that to new tips that I've learned from Ed, Mark, and Barry. So thanks again for everyone for your time. If there's any questions you have for me personally, you can reach me at JC, my initials, jc@htacertified.org. Well, everybody go out there and close some sales. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.